Iceline Mercy, the night Lake Superior kept its promise. The foghorn cut once. The lake answered with a sound like torn glass. And a voice on channel 16, one I didn't know yet, said my name like a rope. Ben, do not step onto skim ice. My name is Ben Kincaid, 31, winter caretaker at the Marquette Harbor Lighthouse and volunteer docent when tourists forget that February exists. I keep the lights records, thaw the pipes, chase drafts through brick, and write polite notes that say, "Please don't climb the Fresnel," as if that sentence has ever worked on a teenager with a phone. When weather behaves, I log ship traffic and talk to 4th graders about lenses and keepers who hold oil in storms. When Lake Superior decides not to perform manners, I become a man who counts the number of heartbeats between the foghorn and the wave. Came to the light after a job, and a man ended on the same day. The job was a bookstore that could no longer make rent on other people's dreams. The man was a carpenter who could make shelves stand straight, but not promises. I moved into the keeper's apartment with 3 boxes of paperbacks, 1 cast iron pan, and a rule that has behaved better than I have. Do not walk ice you haven't built. The UP has a vocabulary to teach you. Sugar, slush crystals that look like snow's older cousin. Fragile, subsurface ice that grows like gossip. Skim, the first deceitful skin on a cove. When it's real winter, the ice stacks like broken plates and the lake goes quiet. When it's shoulder season, January thaw, kissing late season cold, the lake grows opinions sharp enough to cut rope. At 17:14 on a Tuesday that had not asked permission, the NWS alert pinged my phone. Lake effect, snow warning until Salvamament. The radar looked like a blue blizzard had discovered jogging. The wind set its jaw in the northeast. I filled the kerosene like a superstition, checked the foghorn like an oath, and walked the catwalk to the catwalk. The lighthouse's theatrical habit of making you cross a bridge to understand bridges. The radio snapped. Sector Sceaux, Sainte-Marie to all stations. Ice conditions unstable in Marquette Bay and Presque Isle. Small craft should remain in port. Report any close to shore persons on ice. Another voice cut in. Younger, low, like it had learned calm the way you learn to lace boots. Station Marquette Ice Rescue Team, ready one. Copy the warning. This is Luke Moran. If you see someone on new ice, ping me. Ben, you up at the light? My name on 16 is not a usual event. Light here, I said, trying not to sound like the lake had been fed my bones. Visibility under a mile, sugar building in the bay. The college kids who believe in themselves are on the breakwater. He made a noise that was either a laugh or a weather report. They'll believe in us if they fall in. Don't go out. Wasn't going to. I lied because I am a man who gives lectures to children about safety and to myself about exceptions. But the truly shocking part hadn't happened yet. The bay in winter pretends it's a friend. The black rocks at Presque Isle wear frost like armor. The breakwater, our long finger pointing at the ore dock and the horizon, gathers snowdrifts that could hide a moose and once a man's good sense. I watched the kids as far as the squall would permit. 4 figures. 1 red hat, 1 camera held at a genius angle that would eventually sell them to an algorithm. The foghorn gave 1 long like a monk, remembering he knows Latin. The lake answered with a crack. A white-blue line sprinting. Across skim like someone had drawn too hard with a pencil. 2 of the kids ran. One did that human thing where we forget knees work. He slipped and went into the lid, that black mouth between white teeth, up to his chest. He grabbed the edge and learned what everyone learns in their first cold minute. Hands lie. They say hold when they want help. I keyed the handheld. In light to Station Marquette. I've got a subject through on the breakwater lead, center section, a red hat, 3 companions, 1 filming. Copy, Luke said. In the background I heard the zipper sound of a Gumby suit and the clatter language of aluminum sled. Ben, repeat after me. Do not step onto that ice. I'm not stepping, I said. I'm throwing. Grabbed the rescue throw bag from the emergency box by the stairs, the one the Historical Society had rolled. Their eyes at until a 12-year-old carved a heart in the guest book that said you saved my Uncle Dan. I ran the catwalk, boots doing the math of ice on iron. The wind turned my breath into notes that looked like someone else's. The kid in the red hat was silent now, which is a bad word. Hey, I shouted, voice looking for a target and finding a glass mouth. You need to look at me. He turned, and his face, pink with the effort of being alive, made the lake look older. When I throw, you don't grab the rope until I tell you. You grab the loop? You put it on your shoulder, like it's the good kind of bag. He nodded in the way people nod when they have given themselves to another person's sentences. I overshot, always overshoot, the books say. The bag plumped, the rope snaked, and the loop landed 2 feet from his ear like it had learned English. "Now!" I shouted. He looped. He slid. We hauled. I leaned into the angle like the light could lend me extra gravity. His friends grabbed his coat, and for a second we were all one animal, with 4 opinions and 1 purpose. He came out head first and made the sound that says lungs. He lay on the concrete, water pouring from him, as if the lake had decided to be generous after being itself. "Get him up," I said to the 2 who could be trusted. "Walk circle, don't stop moving. Take him to the lee of the lighthouse wall. No hot shower. Blanket only." The camera boy blinked tears into his phone and nodded like a jury. "Station Marquette on scene in 3, Luke said. "Don't take another step, Ben." "It's cute that you think you have to say it," I said. And the lake did a new sound, as air under the new ice belched at the idea of staying horizontal. Wait, don't miss this detail. The StabiSled, aluminum ice rescue sled with cutouts that make it look like a futuristic pizza peel, arrived in red and resolve. 2 yellow-suited rescuers frog-kicked down the breakwater, arms out to distribute weight, ice picks dangling like jewelry that understands purpose. The one in the lead was tall enough to turn adjectives efficient, rope coiled around his chest like a bandolier. When he lifted his head, the squall let me see his eyes, and the calm there made me understand how boats must feel about harbors. "Luke?" I said into the radio. "Hi," the tall one said in person, because sometimes the radio is slower than reality. Up close he looked 29, Michigander handsome, which is to say like someone who can carry a canoe in a conversation. Brown hair clipped for helmets. A scar under his right eye that looked like it had lost an argument with a wire fence. His name tape read Moran. His mouth read competent. "I told you not to step," he said, and I realized my boot was 1 inch farther than he liked from the edge. He hooked his gloved hand around my bicep and scooted me back without pretending it was my idea. "Copy," I said, trying not to smile at a man treating me like precious cargo in a storm. They secured the kids. Foil blankets. Words shaped like anchors. No blame, because later is where you put that. And checked for the second problem any rescue has owed to physics. "Anyone else in?" Luke asked. The camera boy pointed with the kind of slow honesty that means he had had the thought, "Do I lie?" and decided to try adulthood. "Oh, there's a guy farther out," he said, voice cold small. "He walked the plate stack an hour ago. Said he was getting to the ore dock." I didn't think. My skin did its architecture trick, every pore turning into a radio. The ore dock loomed like a medieval promise. Between us and it, the ice had gone from plates to mazes to proverbs. In the narrow seam by the pile of rock, the dog's back, a parka moved in the way jackets move when they contain regret. "Light to station?" I said. "I've got a solo male on plate stack near dog's back, moving toward the ore dock like a person committed to a metaphor." Luke looked once and drew a map in his head I wanted to frame. "He's on candled ice," he said. "Weak columns. 1 step will become a sentence." He turned to me. "If he goes through and we're not there yet, you do nothing but talk. Even if he yells. No heroics." I nodded, becoming a man who obeys. They went, rope clicking, sled whispering. Their weight, teaching the ice to be a student. I moved along the lighthouse wall to keep eyes on the moving regret. He saw me, which means he saw safety, and tried to make a deal with it. "Go back," I shouted. And he shook his head in the way men do when they've practiced being wrong. He took a step, and the ice sang, a high, thin hymn that I will hear in the cereal aisle in July. He took another, and the hymn turned into a sentence with an exclamation point. He went in. "Hey," I shouted, every word and all. "Listen to me. Don't kick. Spread your arms. Keep your head up. Take 2 breaths. Now you're going to roll like you're getting out of a hammock." He looked at me the way a dog looks at a thunderstorm. The kind of belief that has nothing to do with theology. He did what my sentences said. It was not elegant. Elegance is a summer sport. He got his chest on the plate. The plate sulked but held. He rolled once, twice onto ice that behaved like a committee. He stopped, shaking in a way that had a tempo, not a beat. "Now you stay flat," I said. "You do not stand. You army crawl toward the big men in yellow with love in your heart." He laughed once in the stupid way people laugh when they're obeying. The yellow suits got him. Got him onto the sled. Got him onto the breakwater. Got him past the part where physics thinks it's allowed to keep you. Luke helped him stand. The man said, "I'm an idiot," which is the passport to citizenship. "Welcome," Luke said, voice a handshake. He looked at me then, a glance like a draft blowing under a closed door. "Nice coaching," he said. "Nice everything else," I said. I thought the lake had spent all its surprises, but Superior counts different. By 1840, the squall performed its repeat chorus and then, briefly, remembered to breathe. The kids shivered themselves into our spare blankets, and a new personality trait called caution. The man from the plate stack learned a lesson that his bones will teach him every time he walks past a hockey gear aisle. I handed out hand warmers and apologies. Luke ran his team through their ritual. After a call, you do a check that has nothing to do with gear and everything to do with faces. The foam under his boots squeaked like it wanted to be. Included in the conversation sector. To Station Marquette, the radio said with that tone. Field units listen for when they love their jobs and have rehearsed their funerals. A report of 2 ice fishermen overdue north of Little Presque Isle. Truck in the lot, shanty not visible. Marquette copies, Luke said. He looked at me. We're staging at Wetmore Landing. You don't come. You don't. You call me if anybody wanders out on the breakwater for a second round? And if they do? I asked. You talk, he said. Apparently you're good at that. That's my winter sport, I said. He hesitated, in the way men hesitate when words want to be braver than facts permit. Then he put his gloved hand on my jacket sleeve, resting, not owning. If you panic, tell me. I already did, I said. He smiled with only one corner, a trick I would later accuse him of learning from the lake. Me too, he said, and he was gone. Yellow on white on grey, which is what faith looks like in the UP. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. The lighthouse in a storm is a religion invented by people who don't trust the original. I brewed coffee strong enough to dissolve grief. I set towels in a row like a weatherman staging a miracle. I walked the gallery and watched the town turn its lights on like promises. The oar dock stood against the weather like always. The bay breathed. At 19:30 my phone lit with a number that has no obligation to me and every obligation to the lake. Luke Moran, the display said in the savage honesty of caller ID. I answered like a person who has not rehearsed being cool. We've got our fishermen, he said. Shanty drifted into shore slush south of Harlow Lake. Cold, mad, alive. We're running hot cocoa diplomacy. You clear? Clear, I said. Stay that way, he said. I'm bringing you a cocoa. And we need the lighthouse as warming station for 2 frost nips. Copy, I said, and I wanted to say be careful the way civilians say it to heroes, but he is not a hero. He is a man who cheats physics politely for a living. I'll be the red brick building that makes sailors cry. He laughed the way men laugh when they have decided to live. They came with the cold trailing behind them like stubborn dogs. Frostnip, not frostbite, which treats fingers as souvenirs. Plays a color movie on hands and cheeks that looks like your body arguing with its thermostat. I handed cups the way altar boys used to hand bread. Luke stood in the doorway, like God had asked him to get some air. Up close, without a helmet, he looked younger and older at the same time. The scar under his eye softened in heat. You good? He asked me. I keep being, I said. He looked at the Fresnel and did the respectful thing. Hands behind his back, eyes doing the math of glass. You live with this? He asked. I live with her, I said, because we gender things that would kill us if they got the chance. Fair, he said. He looked at the logbook on my desk. You write all this? Paper forgives, I said. Me too, he said. And for a second, we were 2 men who had chosen the world's least profitable hobbies. Light, rope, and telling it true. The fishermen thawed into men we didn't have to lecture. One asked for a pen to write stupid on his glove and then laughed until the air forgave him. The kids from the breakwater texted their mothers, who texted back 37 pictures of soup. At 2015, the squall proved it could do encore. White so absolute it felt like light had given itself a migraine. Through that white, a new sound, metal on metal, not harbor familiar, crept down the bay. I squinted through the slit of window above the desk and felt my equilibrium spin. Out past the oar dock, between hunger and bad idea, a fat bike came into view. A man pedaling where a road will never be. Studs biting either ice or belief. Luke, I said. And he didn't say don't until after he took one breath. We've got a biker on plate line mid-bay. Of course we do, he said. Marquette deploying too. Ben, this is where I tell you. I won't, I said, and meant step and possibly blink. The biker moved at a respectable clip for a man on a wrong surface. He hit a candled seam and the bike performed a physics lecture. He pancaked, slid, then, because bodies are instruments, popped up into a stance that said embarrassment first and hypothermia later. He began to jog toward shore. Jogging is bad, I told the window. Jogging is a poem about fractures. Luke and his partner sprint crawled the breakwater with the sled, doing its piano impression. The biker saw them and did the math badly. Turned toward them, toward the thin, toward the word rescue that looks like risk when spelled on ice. My mouth formed a sentence without my permission. I ran to the outer door, leaned into the white, and shouted a word I had not used since Little League. Freeze! He did because the body knows who coaches it. Get flat, I shouted. Spread out. Put your arms on the ice like you're hugging a table. Do not move. He obeyed with the precision of a person ashamed. Luke reached him in 20 slow years, and one fast minute clipped him in and dragged him to the breakwater like the lake owed him a favor. Inside, on the lighthouse floor, the biker lifted his goggles and looked like every man you've ever forgiven for being alive. He said, "I'm sorry." And nobody did the easy thing by saying for what. I thought the last save would be the last. Superior counts in threes. The storm eased a notch, enough to let the harbor lights admit they were performing. Luke leaned against the radiator like a wolf trying out domestic. He took his glove off with his teeth because sometimes hands need a minute. His fingers were red with the memory of not quite frost. I handed him a ceramic mug I keep for volunteers and the future. He held it with two hands in the way children hold treasure. "What's your tell?" he asked. "My tell? When you're about to do the dumb brave thing," he said. "What do you feel first?" "I count," I said. 1 to 4. "I stop at 3. That's a good religion," he said. He had a quiet of his own, not the practiced stoicism of a boy who grew up on Don't Cry, but the honest stillness of a man who has learned crying won't flood a room as fast as what comes after. We were alone in the room for 8 seconds, that I measured only by breath. I said, "You said my name on the radio like I was an address." He tilted his head. "I grew up here," he said. "The lighthouse is an address." "I like that," I said. "Me too," he said. And then the lake remembered the talent it had forgotten for half an hour. Taking. Ranger Dave. Retired. Never really. Burst in. Hat making snow behave like punctuation marks. We've got a pickup on the boat launch ramp with the trailer into the water," he said. "No boat. Driver says his brother took the John boat to check the line. The line is in the lake. He is in the lake. 2 minutes ago." Luke stood so fast his mug didn't have time to miss him. "Marquette acknowledges," he said into the radio. "To me, all business. Warm station stays open. Ben, this is the moment. I do not have time to talk you out of being who you are. Do not step on ice. If you see him, you talk him into staying high and wide." "Copy," I said. "And then, come back." He nodded once. "I promise you don't make lightly around Superior. Only if you're here to receive," he said, and left to go explain to the lake what belonging means. "What you've seen so far is nothing." I climbed the light and turned the gallery into a position from which prayer looks like observation. Through gaps in the white I could see the boat launch. The little John turned into a bad sketch. The person, brother, standing in it with that posture peculiar to men who haven't fallen yet, but whose legs are rehearsing. The current, seesh weird and wind weird, lifted and set the boat like a hand putting down a glass too hard. "Hey!" I shouted, guessing at distance and multiplying by panic. "Sir, sit down." He looked up at the light as if God had chosen a different architectural style. He sat. The boat slapped a plate edge, yawed, then found a path between 2 lines of candles that would reject him in a minute. Luke and his partner came at him from the slush line, sled ripsawing sugar, rope stitching the scene into a safer story. They got him, they got him, they got him. The whole sentence requires repetition. Inside the light, after, the room filled with men who had learned a lesson and men who had not and were not invited to speak. The brothers shook the last of their pride into the trash and the first of their gratitude onto our floor. Luke took 2 steps toward me till we were in the kind of proximity that winter allows. He did not take his glove off this time. He rested his forehead to mine, just a beat, because salt water gets kisses and fresh water gets promises. He said, "You okay?" "I keep being," I said, almost laughing at how the sentence refuses novelty. He nodded at the Fresnel. "You record?" "I record," I said. He smiled with only his eyes, which I would later learn is how men from here say more. "And put this in your book. We left with as many hearts as we came with." "I will," I said. Final. 2 days later, Uppy 8 and 40, a local Instagram that makes plumbers famous, posted a blizzard montage. Yellow suits frog kicking the breakwater, a sled nose sliding like a miracle, a fat bike looking guilty, teenagers wrapped in metallic humility. The last frame, half a second, almost a mistake, was a Polaroid on the lighthouse desk, wet ring from a mug on its corner, the gloss catching the Fresnel's light. In the photo's left margin, 2 figures by the radiator. A man in a yellow rescue suit, a man in lighthouse red, foreheads inclined as if comparing heartbeats. The caption, typed by someone who understands weather better than algorithms, small, honest, enough. Luke texted me the post, then after a pause, long enough to qualify as a decision. Dinner? Always, I wrote. Good, he said. Because I am. We ate pasties that could risole a boot and argued politely about whether ketchup is a crime. We did not make a schedule. We made a ritual. When the horn cuts once, we text here. When the bay grows teeth, we text me too. He keeps a spare beanie on my coat hook. I keep an extra hand warmer in his truck. When the lake is quiet, we walk the breakwater together. And my rule learns a new clause. Do not walk ice you haven't built, or ice you have, if you built it alone. Sometimes the safest place isn't a house with heat. Sometimes it's a brick room that forgives the weather. Sometimes it's a voice on 16 that says your name like an address. Sometimes it's a forehead touch, and a laugh after a save that didn't belong to you, and a book where you write it down because paper forgives. I'm here, I say when the lake decides to practice. Me too, he says. And Superior, which never lies to anyone for long, keeps its promise to let us try again.